So with a name like the Annihilator in Battletech, the hype, the buildup of this mech, I have to say at first glance, first time I explored the technical readout and in painting the model, I was a little bit let down. I was expecting much, much more with a name like that. I was expecting, given the fact that it is an early fusion of Clan and Inner Sphere tech, 100 tons, I was expecting like 4, 6 PPCs or lots and lots of multiple long-range packs backed by PPCs. And instead we get a mech that is very slow, combined with autocannons and lasers. Isn't that like a rifleman? Maybe a little bit jacked up, a little more. But in playing it and getting a chance to put it down on the table for a couple of games, I think the name Annihilator is very spot on. And it took a little bit of while. What I call in Battletech, my own terminology, called the unlock. This idea where even if you're experienced in the game, you look through the various technical manuals, you get an idea of how a mech operates. And certainly, unless it's 1 versus 1, mechs operate with other mechs in a lance and total warfare and tanks and infantry. But it takes a couple of plays to really see how things shake out and to see how the mech deals with different weight classes, different tonnage, different type of weapons configurations. And what I learned from the Annihilator was combining 2 deadly factors in Battletech. The first is sustained fire. We see a lot of mechs that can dish out a lot of damage, but not all the time. So often what they rely on is this, what's called the alpha strike in Battletech, where I fire off all of my weapons in one really devastating burst, totally pushing the heat, taking penalties, maybe even having to make a couple of shutdowns, overrides there, with the idea of crippling your mech or destroying it. So we see something like the Warhammer or Battlemaster, perfectly fine mechs, dishing out some damage. And then as you take internal damage, or if it's a vehicle, once it takes some serious motive hits and starts punching through, then we fire off everything. We cook off everything for the alpha strike. There is no alpha strike with the Annihilator, and that's what makes it so potent. It has the ability, 4 autocannons. I guess we should back up and look at the armament, right? 4 Lbx Autocannons. So this is going to give you a choice between cluster ammunition or solid slug on there if you're playing with those rules, and then it backs up with 4 medium lasers on there, pulse lasers. So we have this constant ability at both a longer range and a short, medium to short range, the ability to lay down with heat sinks constant firepower every single turn. So once you're in range, of course, this is true for any mech, you start shooting. But the Annihilator has the ability to just constantly, as it gets closer and closer and closer, lay down this withering fire. And the fire is a combination. You get to pick ahead of time based on your ammunition loadout. But if we see a 50-50 or a 3-1, this idea that you are firing away with the AC-10s, AC-10's got some bite, you know it's up there. You're firing away, punching through armor with the solid, and then crit seeking with the clusters, and then switching over to the lasers as things get closer, and using the autocannon clusters to crit seek on there. So what we find is something that just grinds you down very, very fast, opens you up to internals, and then it's just crit seeking. Now we do this often with missiles, but they generate a lot more heat on there. Being a 100-ton mech, often it's not the best choice, but sometimes what we'll see is the ability to slug it out. So we'll take something like the Awesome, we'll take an Atlas, we'll take a Battlemaster, and we can go toe-to-toe for a little bit. Not that I always want to do that, but I'm willing to do that a little bit if I can wear you down and essentially trade you to internals, see who blinks first. Can't do that with an Annihilator. It's got the tonnage, it's got the armor, and it's constantly combining the idea of crit seeking and constant sustained fire. It's just going to grind you down on there. Now, the foil to this, of course, piloting such a massive mech, having the weapon systems, stacking the armor. It's slow. But is that really a drawback on there? And would I increase the speed of the mech? Another thought is, we'll drop the lasers on there. No, we need to keep those. Essentially, it's a point-and-click mech. And what I mean by that is, you, based on the mission parameters, as best you can, you determine where your opponent's going to be or how they're going to approach or where you're going, and the Annihilator just marches in that direction. The speed is also less of a problem if you are playing on a hex map, and this leads into the idea of hex map versus open wargaming table. Hex maps tend to be a little bit smaller. A lot of us just play on one map or maybe two maps. Speed is not so much an issue. If you're playing on a more traditional wargaming table, where you see 6x3 or a couple of dozen maps pushed together, speed then becomes more of an asset because your opponent has the ability to outflank. Your opponent has the ability to kind of push forward. If you engage and it's not going well, you can pull away. But aptly put, after a couple of plays, I have to say the Annihilator is a very, very interesting mech. Something that, existing in the technical manuals, might be overlooked a little bit. But it certainly has a lot of punch and a lot of push through there. An interesting complement to the Imp.